Hi, I'm Rick Brimacombe, and on behalf of the Minneapolis Club and my firm, Brimacombe and Associates, welcome to Club Entrepreneur. Usually would spend a little bit more time doing some stuff here, but I'm going to kind of push through the announcements so that we have as much time as possible with our panelists, because I think it's a great topic. The number of people that are new to the group for this event today would tell me that it's a great topic, so thank you for being here. Before we get to the panel, just a reminder kind of why I picked this, and I put that out in the marketing. 40% of the new businesses in the U.S. are female owned and run. Women entrepreneurs are the fastest growing segment of the small business community. And so the fact that more and more women are embracing entrepreneurship, but then facing those challenges makes today's panel all the more important. But before we get to that, women business owners, I want to thank our sponsors. Schwegman, Lumberg, Woosner is an intellectual property law firm, and they've been a sponsor since day one. Dave D'Azzurilla is back in the corner over there. Dave waved to everybody. So thanks to Schwegman, Lumberg, Woosner. Olson Thielen CPAs is a full-service accounting firm. They've been a sponsor since 2009. I think I have several people here today. I know I have one over there. Wave your hand so we got one over there. Any over here? Because I know I got to cut. Yep, over there. Yep. Thank you for coming. Irish Titan is a web development and e-commerce company. I didn't see anybody here, but I should say for all of these sponsors, I have done work with them, and I've had portfolio companies do work with them. So I can speak from firsthand. They all do a great job. Irish Titan is working on a project right now for me. Sunbelt Business Brokers is an M&A advisory firm. They've been a sponsor for a couple of years. I actually just closed on a transaction on Monday with them, so Sunbelt Business Brokers is a sponsor. McLeod & Co., a holistic marketing agency. Where's Allison was? Over here, Allison, and then Tanya's on our panel today. I've done a number of things with them, and they are working with a couple of my portfolio companies. Highland Bank, I know I have 3 or 4 people. Rick Wall, the CEO over there. Melissa over here. Got over here, yeah, welcome. Highland Bank's a local family-owned community bank, and I have a project with them, actually a couple of projects with them going right now. And then the Network Connect is a catalytic gateway for connecting investors, companies, and service providers. Dick Summerstead is not here, but where's Johnny? Johnny came here. Oh, over there. Hey, Johnny is helping us with some stuff with the Network Connect. Anyway, the sponsors we have do a great job. As I mentioned, I've worked with all of them. I'm currently working with all of them. And so use them to the extent you can, because they make these events possible. Please remember to RSVP online through Brown Paper Ticket. Generally, we're the first Thursday of the month, but we moved it back a week because of the holiday. As you can see, the room can get full, so those RSVPs ahead of time are helpful to the Minneapolis Club. Website is clube.com. You can sign up for our newsletter if you'd like to learn more about what's going on, videos, events. There's a business directory that you can sign up for. The LinkedIn group has about 2,500 members. This little card that's on your table will point you towards the LinkedIn group if you want to connect up there. We have about, as I said, 2,500 people there. In the meetup group, we have about 1,800 people. And then there's an email list as well. And if you want to be put on that, you can either sign up off of the website or give me your card. I will take care of that. Minneapolis Club has been a sponsor on this. Where's Margaret Leto? Right here up in front. So Margaret worked here for many, many years and did a great job basically running the club. And Margaret and I put this together back in 2007. So Margaret was, in essence, my sponsor inside the club and did tons of work behind the scenes to make the Club Entrepreneur what it is today. So I owe a lot of thanks to Margaret and appreciate all that she did for me. She has moved on to another great opportunity, which I'm sure she'd be happy to tell you about, but she has done a lot for Clubby over the years, so I'm very grateful for that. Thank you, Margaret. And then the folks at McLeod came up with a great idea, the Business of the Month. And so last month we picked got some cards from folks in this fishbowl, and we picked out one of those cards, which was Daddy Sam's All Natural Sauces. Is by any chance, is anybody here today from Daddy Sam's? I went on the website last night, really fun story about how they came to be. And so what we're going to do with them is push Daddy Sam's sauces out through the Club E social stuff for the month of January. So again, they gave us their card last month. We drew it out. Now they get pushed out through the LinkedIn, the Facebook, and Twitter that we have going with Club E. So if you want to be included in the fishbowl for the February Club E Business of the Month, please give me your card. I worked that side of the room a little bit. I did not get to this side of the room, so I will keep this up here, and if somebody wants to do that afterwards, please do. I also have this fabulous Vikings football, which is for good luck, for even if you're not a Vikings fan, even if you don't like football, the fact that they're in the playoffs and have a very realistic chance of making the Super Bowl in the hometown. Actually, it would be the first time ever that a football team would be playing in their home stadium. So even if you despise football, it still would be a fabulous event for the city. So I got the purple shirt going on over here. Nicole has got the purple jacket going on over there. So we're all Vikings 24/7. Anyway, so I was going to draw a card out of there, but I didn't get to this side of the room, so I don't want to cheat anybody out of the opportunity for the football. So the next idea I had was, is anybody in the room, anybody here actually go to one of the Super Bowls that the Vikings were in? Seriously? Christina, you went to one? Which one? Oakland. All right, well, that was the idea I had. The next thing down, I was going to go from there. So Christina, you get the football. Let's give her a round of applause. I didn't think anybody would go, so my next question was going to be, was anybody at the Drew Pearson Hail Mary game in 1975? Because I was. So you and I were the only people? Okay, so then the next triage down was who was at the 98 game against Atlanta NFC Championship with the wide right field goal? You and I were. Okay, Nicole was there too. Okay, so those are my questions. So we're going to change the karma. We got the football, and we're going to give the Vikings all the good energy we can for a Super Bowl appearance. Okay, back to the serious stuff. All right, future clubby events. There's a calendar of events on the table if anybody wants to take those. I have an angel group called Sagas Club that's meeting next Tuesday the 16th. If anybody has an interest in that, please see me. Companies present. Folks, angel investors are in the audience if somebody wants info on that. Chum Struve, where are you? Chum's over here. St. Paul, January 17th. Their panel is Real ROI, Making Your Marketing Dollars Work. Great panel, and the old adage of about 50% of your marketing dollars are working, but you don't know which 50%. We're going to learn which 50% are working from Chum and the amazing panel that she has next week. January 23rd is a Clubby and Upsize event right here. Managing rapid growth, those folks that have rapidly growing companies and you're trying to avoid some of the growing pains that you might otherwise experience. So I have some expert panelists to talk about that, and one of those expert panelists is here. Kristen Boss, where are you? Kristen? Over here, Kristen Boss and Insperity is one of the panelists for Managing Rapid Growth on January 23rd. February 1st, back here on the first Thursday, Navigating the Gig Economy. For those of you who have the quote-unquote side hustle thing going, or you have multiple revenue streams or whatever, the gig economy, Navigating the Gig Economy is February 1st. I got a panel. And then the Network Connect has a reverse elevator pitch. If you've never been to one of those, but you're thinking about raising money, I actually spoke to a couple of people about that earlier today. It's a great way to hear what investors look at, how they look at it, and so forth. That's through the Network Connect. Again, that's on a calendar on your tables. Okay, so to our panel today, Sharon Bloodworth is CEO of White Oaks Wealth Advisors. Megan Elliott is CEO and founding principal of PVN. Tanya Corpy McLeod, CEO of McLeod & Co. And Gwen Martin is partner of Scouts Co. The interesting thing about the four women here is I've had an opportunity to know them all in both the professional setting as well as on the personal front. So it's a privilege and an honor for me to have them all here. So thank you for coming and spending your time with us. We've spent a fair amount of time coming up with a great slate of questions. With that said, these are intended to be a dialogue and not just a one-sided conversation. And so when I get to the Q&A section, I will give you a heads up on that. And then if somebody wants to chime in and put something in front of the panel, we will do that. Okay, so with a quick introduction that I gave everybody, why don't you all take another minute to kind of give a little bit about your background, describe your business, and so forth. We'll start with you.
Perfect. My name is Sharon Bloodworth. I own two firms, White Oaks Wealth Advisors and White Oaks Investment Management. We're here in the IDS and also in Longboat Key, Florida, for those who aren't so comfortable with the winter here. We're about a 30-year-old firm. As of October, I bought my partner out, so now we are the largest independent registered investment advisory, women-owned, in Minnesota. So that was really life-changing for me. I deal with almost exclusively millionaires, multimillionaires, and those who want to get there. I also help CEOs of public corporations negotiate in and out of their jobs there. As you can tell, I have a British accent. I was born in the UK, but my dad worked for an American oil company, so we moved countries every couple of years in Africa and Indonesia. And I was lucky enough to be born in the UK when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister and the Queen was Queen, so I thought there wasn't anything I couldn't do in the world except for possibly be Pope. And I think that one's passed as well. I'm also insanely excited to be American. I was an American citizen. I just passed my 10th anniversary. And most people don't realize how lucky you are to be American, how I could not have achieved what I am today in the UK relative to how open this society is to women in business. So I'm just absolutely thrilled. And the funniest thing is my lucky break into this industry was actually because I was a woman, because I actually came over from the UK to do an internship in American finance. And again, they only selected ladies to come over because we would type. And so it didn't matter about how many languages I knew, where I was educated. It was all about how quickly I could type. And I just made the cutoff by one word. And so thanks to that, thanks to my mother and everyone who's gone before us, that I'm not in a typing pool somewhere, because I'm not sure I'd be that successful.
Great. Thanks, Sharon. Megan.
Great. Megan Elliott. I'm going to give you the story of how I got to be sitting in this seat today. I'm delighted to be sitting here. Thank you, Rick. My first real job was in construction. And I was in high school, and I was cutting trails and repairing bridges and working for the California State Parks. And it didn't occur to me at the time that as a female in high school, that may not be the place where one would typically look for a job as a female in high school. But it was probably one of the best jobs I've ever had, besides what I do today. So that was where I fell in love with construction and the built environment. And that passion is what took me to study what I studied, which was engineering, which as one of very few women in engineering, it also didn't occur to me at that time that that wasn't the right field for me, even though none of my classmates were women, but studied engineering so I could learn how we build, and I also studied art so I could understand why we build. And I took that passion further into graduate school, studying engineering and architecture, and I decided that there was a problem out there that needed to be solved, in addition to women in business. But the problem I needed to solve was, how do we keep our buildings in use? And to me, the heritage of our buildings and the history of our buildings was very important, and that was a problem that the industry didn't quite get right yet. So I came to entrepreneurship from the angle of, I see a problem, I need to solve it, I can solve it, and therefore built my company around it. So that was my entry into entrepreneurship. So what we do today, my company's called PVN, we reuse sites, and we reuse challenging sites and any sites with heritage. And frankly, all of our sites have heritage that's worth understanding and reinterpreting. So we have, we're here in Minneapolis. There are currently 8 of us. We're in Northeast Minneapolis. We focus on sites across the country, but we focus on challenging sites and bring value to existing and historic buildings.
And I know she likes what she does, because I have been with her where we were climbing through a basement and an attic of a rundown old property that hopefully we'll be able to do something with. So anyway, she truly likes what she's doing. Tanya.
Hi, I'm Tanya Corfin McLeod. I don't have quite the passion behind that, but I kind of came to this. I spent 10 years in Europe, just bumming around and working and all that kind of stuff, and came back here in 2007 and started a job as freelancing in marketing. And my husband and I purchased an investment company which owned franchise businesses, so automotive businesses. So between 2007 and kind of the last, I don't know, 2007, maybe 2012, the McLeod business grew quite a bit. I think we're now up to about 8 employees. And in last year, my husband died really suddenly, and so now I am also the CEO and sole owner of Mintex, the investment corporation, which now owns 8 Valvoline instant oil change stores. And that's just been a very interesting transition to go from a company that I built from the ground up, which is largely female, to walking in one day super suddenly. It was very sudden, and I walked in and kind of said, hey guys, I've got some news and I'm your new boss, which was really tough. And another kind of notable thing is the McLeod business isn't currently, but it was when I left it, 100% female, and the Valvoline business is 100% male. So it's been a very interesting journey, I suppose. But that's how I'm here and what my businesses are.
And you've done a nice job juggling those, and thank you for joining us. And again, Tanya's firm, McLeod, is one of the sponsors for Club E, so thanks for your help there.
Thank you.
Gwen Martin.
Great. I'm Gwen Martin. I am a business owner and entrepreneur. Through my career, I've been part of growing a number of companies, both as spin-offs of larger organizations or as startups. I've spent most of my time in the recruiting and staffing industry, growing agencies both locally and nationally. And through that time, I've really gotten a chance to see companies through really the bird's eye view or through the back door, and became really curious on different business models and different business structures, really understanding kind of what works and what doesn't work through the consultants that we place at these different companies on the issues that they're brought in to solve. And with that curiosity, kind of how do companies monetize a business idea, and just the curiosity around different business models, it really has brought me to where I am today. I currently have ownership in 3 different companies. The first one is called Scouts, which is a consulting firm. It's a finance and accounting consulting firm headquartered in the West End. We are a startup. That model is a startup, and we're just going into our 3rd year of business. It's a partnership between myself and 2 gentlemen, which is interesting because my other ones are different blends of that. It is an interesting industry to be in, accounting and finance, traditionally a very male-dominated field, and this is where I've spent the bulk of my career that way. The second one is called AMA. AMA is a parenting education company. Our core business is really we partner with a number of hospital systems across the metro area. They outsource their prenatal education to us. We also then carry that over to postnatal, new mom, and new parent education. That company is a company I invested in about a year ago. Along with a business partner, we were looking at a company to buy, and AMA came along, and we were able to close on that. That company is just over 10 years old, and we've got 7 locations across the metro. Again, that's a different business model, a partnership between myself and 2 other females, so different than Scouts. And that's headquartered in Edina with, again, 7 other locations across the metro. The third company is called People's Organic, which is a restaurant concept. That company is a company I've been involved in since the founding membership group came together about 8 years ago. That's a franchise model on the restaurant side. We've got 7 or 8 different restaurant locations now, soon to be 2 more, with the addition of 2 at the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport by the end of 2018. So it's a franchise model for the restaurant side of it, and then a manufacturing and distribution model for the coffee that can be found in grocery stores across the United States. So those are the 3 businesses I'm part of, and 3 different ownership and 3 different models and structures that I'm involved in.
Great, thank you, Gwen.
Yeah.
Why don't we come back down here, Sharon? Give us minute or two, share a couple stories, anecdotes about kind of how you fit into today's topic and how you kind of view this conversation.
Oh, super. So, our industry is very male-dominated. About 20% of financial advisors are women, and far fewer investment managers. I was just going back and forth with a Wall Street Journal journalist on this just the last couple of days, and she was talking about wanting to do an article on the women angle and our sort of my background on it. And I really explained that 2018 is supposed to be the year of the dog, but I actually truly believe it's the year of the woman. Because there's a massive moral shift in this country right now, and so if you can't get ahead this year, then you're probably not going to be able to get ahead. And so I think it's brilliant. And when I look at my industry per se, I think the future is for women, because I do think that about 80% of advisors will be out of a job within about 10, 20 years because of robo-advisors. I mean, our industry is under attack from software, for better or for worse. And so I was watching this show called Humans, but it's actually about robots. This robot was explaining to this human mother that she was a better mother. She said that essentially, I don't get sick, I don't forget my children at school, I don't forget sort of different things that are important. And she said, but the only thing I can't do is love your children. And if you think about the future of our industry and what robots can't do, it's the caring for your clients and the loving and really caring for their outcomes. And I think that's completely in a woman's wheelhouse. And so I think honestly that the future is really ours. I was the first woman in a CEO roundtable group, and I remember walking in there, and they were actually debating at the table as to whether to let women in. And they all sort of, they said, well, we can't tell the jokes we tell, and we're going to have to clean up our language. And I said to them, well, gentlemen, I probably have bigger something or other than half of you in the room, so just carry on as normal. They laughed, I laughed, we haven't looked back, and to be honest, I would say that the men in my life have been my biggest champions. I prefer to belong to places that don't want me. If anything, if women aren't allowed in something, then I'm usually there knocking on the door, sort of asking to visit. I also have a collection of very famous women's shoes, because if you think about what those women had to go through, and probably that on their hardest day is pretty incredible. So I have Margaret Thatcher's, and I have Oprah's, and Audrey Hepburn's, and very occasionally Margaret Thatcher's shoes actually fit me, and I have 3 pairs. And so sometimes when I'm in a very big meeting or a large conference, I'll sometimes wear her shoes and just channel her, which I think is pretty funny. But I can say that I've been very, very lucky in that sort of being a woman in my business, I haven't really experienced a lot of negatives based on that. Sometimes my original sort of male partner, I would step out from behind him and they would think I was the assistant, but I've always taken great joy in sort of maximizing who you are and then quietly coming up from behind, and then they realize you're the one in charge. And I think it's a short thing. We're little Napoleons, really. The other part is that when I went through the buyout of my partner, I went to a couple of different banks, and I remember one bank asked me, and of nobody who's in the room, and they asked me if my husband was going to be at that meeting, and whether sort of my male partner would be as well. And this was just a pure sort of get to meet you meeting. And I wished I'd said, no, but my dad will be. I didn't have the thought. And so I think it is more pervasive than I think about it, but thankfully I've just charged through. And as I mentioned sort of in my opening, is that when you look at other countries, there's a significant difference in opportunity here that I think is really, really important to not, is to not ignore how far things are here already.
Thank you. Megan.
Sure. So I didn't grow up in a family of entrepreneurs, and I didn't even have business ownership on my radar probably until I was maybe 30 years old. So kind of coming into this field, I didn't even think of it, didn't know it was even an option for me. So I thought it was interesting that you talked about charging through, and I have to be frank that I don't think it ever occurred to me to not charge ahead. And I was probably maybe oblivious to some of the obstacles that were in front of me, just to be honest about it. I think they were out there and I didn't see them. But that being said, once I had it in my head that there was a problem to be solved, I charged ahead. And so that problem to me was, again, keeping these sites and keeping these buildings in use. And so my world started to revolve around how do you solve this problem. And it took me about 10 years of thinking and reading and connecting with people that I thought had done it well to come up with the idea behind the business. And then starting my business about 6 years ago and continuing to try to solve the problem. So I thought I'd kind of give you a little bit of philosophy on how we structured our business around this problem. I read a book probably a couple of years ago by the author Cal Newport, who some of you may know. The book I read of his was So Good They Can't Ignore You. Highly recommend it. But one of the things he talks about is the adjacent possible, and his philosophy behind the adjacent possible, which is a term he borrowed from somebody else. But it is to say, if you need to find a new solution or a new way of doing something, then you need to get to the cutting edge of your field. You need to look out over that cutting edge and see what is going on in the adjacent possible around you, because new ideas come from combinations of existing solutions that are out there. So I started to build the business around looking at the cutting edge of my field and the cutting edge of adjacent fields to look at how do I combine existing solutions to make a new idea. So the practice that I have and the business that I have is very interdisciplinary. It brings together a lot of fields that touch existing and historic buildings, including historical architecture and historical engineering and real estate development, history, all of these different pieces to come up with new ways of solving this difficult problem. I've never tried to have a majority woman business. I happen to have 6 of 8 employees who are women, including myself. I have had men on staff. They have, for a variety of reasons, mostly selected to leave on their own accord. I did actually start with a male partner who was one of the ones that selected to leave. So it has been interesting that we have, and I would say 6 to 8 applications out of 10 I get are from women, regardless of me soliciting openly to anybody, but those are the people that are attracted to my business, interestingly.
Great. Tanya?
Well, like most entrepreneurs, I became an entrepreneur because I'm unemployable. And I think every entrepreneur in this room would agree with that. And I lasted being way too smart until about employee number 1. And that is when I realized, everything that I know is wrong. And that's when I started having to kind of fake it on a lot of levels. The business that no one else here fakes it, I'm sure. The business that I built on my own, holistic marketing, was born out of a kind of a freelance gig that I wanted to help people do better marketing and manage their advertising agencies for them. And that got big enough that I needed some help, and then it got big enough that I needed a whole advertising agency to support that. But defining that trajectory was really fun and exciting, but that wasn't actually where the sweat came, and the sweat and the growth kind of came with the emotional intelligence, with the finance, with learning how to do office space, the perfect snacks to keep people interested, and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of the big journey of it. And stepping back a little bit further to that, I grew up in an era of free to be you and me. Does anybody remember that? And there's no sexism in the world. We're all completely equal, and that's what I listen to on my Fisher-Price record player over and over and over. So I know this is true. And it was a big betrayal when I was probably 25 when I admitted to myself that this does kind of suck. And when I spent my time in Europe, there wasn't even any pretending. Sexism is just so real. And so that's been an interesting contrast, kind of being here in America and growing that company up from the ground up. And then, again, the contrast just in the last year of taking over a existing, completely male-dominated company, a male-dominated industry that was run by a man, and going in and taking that over and seeing the difference between kind of what feminine leadership does there. And feminine leadership, I kind of trip over that statement, but what feminine leadership does in a kind of a black and white situation. Yesterday it was this way, and today it's this way, and how that business has changed quite a bit just in the last 6 or 8 months. It's really, really interesting. It's a lot more in touch with itself.
All right, thank you. Gwen?
Yeah. No, similar to you, Megan, I have definitely experienced pushback in my career, but typically I haven't really noticed it. I just kind of plow ahead and look for the solution, and have probably gotten more pushback than I realized over the course of that time. A couple of different observations came to mind when I was thinking about comments today. One is an experience I had when we were putting together our offer for AMA, the parenting education company. And one thing that we really noticed is that in almost every situation, we were the minority in the room, with 2 females looking for a company to buy. And that always kind of struck me as odd, like, why aren't more females here? How come there aren't more at the table and looking at this opportunity to have the hand on their own steering wheel? And that really came out to our advantage as AMA came along. Definitely a female type of a company, female founder, talking about babies, new parenting, breast pumps all day long is definitely more of a female buy. And so when that came up, we were confident in putting together a competitive offer, knowing that it would be some time before another female buyer likely came along. So in that situation, it definitely worked to our advantage. But with my other life in the consulting and recruiting world, I often get the question, especially from women in their 50s, saying, I'm really having a hard time finding a new role. I'm having a hard time in the corporate world finding a job. I'm competing against people much younger than myself, and people think I'm overqualified. And I always encourage those individuals to look at buying their own company and getting into company ownership, really having control of their own destiny that way, and taking that forward would be a great path for them as well.
Thank you. All right, one last time coming down here and working our way down, and then we'll get to some other questions. Give us your, just kind of overall thoughts on the topic, some bullet points for them to take with, kind of a brain dump, if you will, on the topic. Start down here.
So my mum always said, use what you've got. She said there'll always be somebody more brilliant, smarter, taller, more beautiful. And so I think that my advice was to use what you've got. So for example, in my industry, there have been 2 major surveys done that they've shown random people pictures of financial advisors, and they have an older white gentleman, a younger white gentleman, older white female, younger white female, and then I think it was an African-American male. And they say, who would you want to go to as an advisor? Hands down, on every survey in our industry, it's always the white older male first, the white younger male second, and then the white younger female, white older, and then African American gentleman. And so going through this transition where now we're sort of more of a female-dominated firm, I told my old partner, who is a wonderfully, beautifully handsome white older male, that he is like a mermaid to all of the ships, and that I will never, ever in his entire life take him off the website. And so for people who don't know me, it's very important to do that. And again, it's using what you have. If you know that that's the way that the industry skews today, then I do think it's important to do that, because when they come through the door, they love you and they know you and they stay because of you. But I'm going to use whatever I can do as a siren on my website to get you in there. And so I do think that it's very important to really do that. I remember in my Rotary Club, this went back so maybe 10 years ago, where there was an older lady there, and she told me, she said, Sharon, as an older lady, you become invisible. Nobody really notices you anymore. And she said, let me use this example. She said, I'm going to try and get a grant through, and they won't accept it. And at that point, it's very different today, but back then it was a little bit more male-dominated. And I had one as well. And I really did notice that it was quite true. And so I told her the next time, let's just do it together. It'll be bait and switch. And it was very different for her. So I think one thing that I'm extremely determined to do as I age, maybe gracefully or not, is I refuse to be invisible. And I hope that, again, that the ladies that are pushing forward now continue to do that for the next 20 or 30 years.
Great. Thank you. Megan.
I thought I would take this as my top 3 lessons learned as a woman business owner to extend to everyone. So the 3 things that I've learned over the last 6 years in starting a business. 1, no one has all the skills they need to start and run a good company. So the way that I worked through this was I created an advisory board, and I have to say that I learned about advisory boards from this forum, from Rick Brimacombe as well as Rick Diamond, actually. And that has been a very useful tool for me to build a board around me of people who had the skills and relationships that I needed to create a company. And I still have my advisory board today. It's changed a couple of times. But these are people who have volunteered their time to be my champions, my advocates, my sounding board, my informal mentors, source of business. I wish I could say I had more women on my board. I frankly have, of a board of 6, I have 5 men on my board, but they have been tremendously supportive, and that has been an invaluable tool for me as an entrepreneur, is to have an advisory board. My second lesson learned is that women work very differently than men. And I know there's a lot of scholarship out there about this topic. I can quote none of it, because all that I have is what I see. But I can say that from a work style perspective, I can see that in my office, one of the reasons we can do what we can do so well is that we have a highly collaborative environment, and that is in part due to the number of women I have on my staff who I see effectively and very productively collaborate together. It's not that the men on my team don't collaborate, but there is a difference in how the behavior happens and how the solutions come together in my teams for projects that have all women on them. The other thing from a women working differently than men, I can say that I cannot work a 9-to-5 job. My family demands do not allow me to work a 9-to-5 job. I'm the only parent in my household, so I cannot be there 9 to 5. And that actually was one of the reasons why I started my company. I have set up an infrastructure for my firm that is very supportive of flexible work hours and working from different environments, a mobile work environment, and the infrastructure and technology that you need to do that. So this combination of the work style that we promote in my company combined with the work infrastructure to be more flexible allows me to tap into a great resource, which is professional working women who have family obligations. And I think that gives me, frankly, a competitive edge over other companies that may not be able to effectively attract and retain and support that type of worker. So that is my take on women and how they work. Again, can't quote anything, but that's what I see happening. My third lesson learned is that there is never a good time to start a business. There will always be family demands. There will always be ups and downs in the economy. I can say that when I started my company, my daughter was 6. She's now 12, and she still takes the school bus to my office every day, but we still have that balance. Those are my lessons.
Hey, thank you. Tanya?
I actually took it a little bit kind of differently, but it's same kind of idea. And just to talk about the kind of flip side, you talk about all the disadvantages that women potentially have in starting a business, and I kind of started to dwell on a lot of the opportunities that women have, and one of the biggest opportunities I've already kind of touched on became very real to me when I went to take over the Valvoline business, running, grading 80. At the time, it was only about 5 of the people in the leadership team for the first time. But 25 years that company had been around, and never ever had a woman working in it, let alone leading it. And to walk into that environment, too, I got to be completely vulnerable. I mean, when I walked in, I was crying. And being allowed to be that vulnerable and that open and that honest with them, and to tell them, I don't know what you're doing. I don't have any, real qualification to come over here and take this over, except for my business qualifications. But the ability and the cultural allowance to do that, I think, was a gift that I became a bigger leader of that company that day than a man who didn't have the kind of the connection, but just a man off the street probably could have accomplished in months, is my guess. And so that we do have a lot of opportunities for that. We can call a spade a shovel, where a lot of men kind of can't. I mean, particularly in interpersonal conflicts and that type of stuff in environments, it's very easy just to say, come on, quit it. And it is the allowance of raising a family, not that everybody necessarily is raised a family, but women do have those kind of nurturing kind of concepts, and bringing that in and looking at a team. If I could only pick between 2 things, and one of them being the ability to emotionally connect with a team, or knowing all the ins and outs of the business, I would take emotionally connect to the team 1,000,000 times over every single time, because you don't need to know what's going on. You just need to know how to guide everyone. And that's probably the biggest advantage. And I'm not saying men don't have that, but women are allowed to display it a lot faster, and I think that's a great gift.
Great, thank you. Gwen?
Yeah, a couple takeaways that I've come out with the 3 different business models I'm involved in is, regardless if my partnership is with 2 gentlemen or an all-female partnership, either way, or a startup or a 10-year-old business, it has been a matter of really painting a vision for the company, painting a vision for where we're going, and then where the team fits into that and people will follow. And so really being passionate about things and speaking with that vision, and people can really identify with that and get excited about it. Another takeaway I've had from my career is that I think it's a misperception that pushback comes from males. Actually, the pushback that I have experienced in my career has come from females. Females who are older than me and farther along in their career have not extended a hand to help out or give me a boost up. Almost never. I mean, I can count on probably a few fingers and name names of who has helped me along in my career that's a female, and I would make a long list of the males who've gone out of their way to help me. I think because of the females just older than me were some of the ones to first break through on that career glass ceiling, so to speak. And to reach down and help another female could be misconstrued as only helping me because I'm female, not because I'm the best choice in the room. And so what I'm wary of is joining any type of an organization where it's an all-female networking group or an all-female professional association. I think, why would you cut out half of the opinions and, advice, perspectives, and et cetera? And I wouldn't advise limiting oneself just to all-female anything. So I would like to be known as a great business leader and not necessarily a great female business leader. Having the business leadership my accomplishment, not necessarily my gender as a leader in that. So that's my observation.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I have some other questions, but as I said when we started, wanted to try to hit a 1 o'clock. So I can keep going with mine, or we can see if there are folks in the audience that would like. We got one over here. All right, go ahead.
So, talking about what Miranda said, Sharon, you sound like someone who would be an amazing mentor. Have you ever mentored young women? How did that go?
Sure, so I'm going to repeat it so the people over there can hear it. The question was, has anybody up here been a mentor? How did that go? And why don't we open that to the whole panel and anybody chime in?
Yes, I have been, and to both young women and young men as well, because sometimes in life you watch people stand there and not step forward, and the only difference between what I'm doing today and somebody else who's been trained to do the same thing is literally asking for the opportunity. I became a partner in the firm because I asked for it, and I wished I'd done it earlier.
Mentorship, anybody?
I'm going to take a slightly different spin on mentorship. I spent several years teaching, and I considered this to be my opportunity to facilitate people who were interested in my field. And I was teaching graduate students, upper-level undergrads and graduate students at the University of Minnesota. I have to say I made a conscious decision when my daughter got to the point where she needed more attention to put that on hold and focus on mentoring that particular person. And then I've told myself that I will go back to mentoring other people when she's at a point where she's needs less time.
I view mentoring as an ongoing process with everybody you talk to.
I am on the Board of Governors at the University of St. Thomas School of Entrepreneurship, and part of that is I meet with entrepreneurs coming out of the MBA program, and then just after. Many of these are females, which is so cool to see these kids in their late teens and early 20s coming up with just great ideas they're so passionate about, and then mentoring them to that next level. Certainly a number of males as well, but I definitely get involved in that mentorship program.
Right here.
I'll try to stand since I'm right in the middle, and I'll try to be loud. I'm Anna, and I'm with Proxec. I do augmented virtual reality startup, so I can relate. I'm the only female in the company. I'm among investors, board of directors, staff, employees. But I kind of like it. So being the only female, sometimes I just go and listen to her. But what I'm kind of getting to my question, a few months ago I attended an event where Michelle Obama spoke, and she said something that I don't think I'll ever forget. But she said that during her first year in the office of her husband being the president, mostly all press covered what her husband was doing and what she was wearing. And she said she was very upset, and she talked to her husband, and he said, well, give him a reason to talk about something else about you. And she focused on things that later on press was covering. And that kind of made me think, if someone were to write a story about me, what would they say about me? Like what I'm wearing or what I'm doing? So my question to you would be, is there anything else that you've heard or someone said to you or you've seen in the movie in life that really made you reflect on what you were doing and made a change? You made a change. You started doing things differently that affected your personality and your behavior.
Good question, thank you.
This is one I'll go home tonight and then think of the perfect answer for. That's a reflecting question. I'll explain to everybody here and tell you my perfect answer later. So if anybody else wants to go first.
I mean, you're talking about out in culture or just in life? I mean, my so I had a business partner, a male business partner, who was stealing from me, which I figured out sort of intuitively, and then went and kind of pulled on and found over the weekend a great deal of fraud. So that totally changed how I was as a business person, but I'm not getting to the complete point of that. In doing that, I turned over my team very, very quickly, and I put a bunch of new hires in very, very fast that I thought I could trust. And one of them was a man, and he squared up to me every chance that he got. And I didn't like it, I didn't enjoy it, and I handled it fairly well, but it taught me a huge, huge amount about how to deal with people who are squaring up to you. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing, questioning everything, just right up in your face all the time? What are you doing that for? Do you think that's right? Do you think, why are you talking to me like that? Why everything? He questioned me, he questioned me, he questioned me. To the point that, we were, to something that you said, we were at a major client, and he was a new employee, and I was telling this new client, okay, there's been some impropriety, and I have to be very, very graceful about what I'm saying here. And I say, so this is the new company, this is the new model, you know, you're in good hands. And he turns to this guy and he says, well, what do you think about it? Which that was actually a moment that I did completely change how I dealt with everything. And I was never, I don't want to say I was never weak again. I was never, ever in a way that anybody would see that don't have this. I mean, I have got this completely and totally covered, and again, fake it till you make it. But that's when I realized you have to fake it every single second, and you will make it, and you're not the only one.
And I would also contend that Michelle Obama is correct, but I do believe there are probably more eyeballs on the article looking at her clothes than are listening to sort of what the president's doing. And so sometimes you also have to think about your audience, and it's not a lost opportunity. It creates platforms for you. So, for example, I find myself, I only really talk about being the largest women-owned firm to women because I don't. If I don't think that my audience will care, I don't generally mention it. So I do think that you do sort of bob and weave a little bit based on sort of who you're talking to. But I still contend that even when you look at sort of different presentations, most people just want to talk about their family and sort of more fun things and some of the dry. So you just if that's what people want, that's where you go.
I'll just throw in one more thing about this because I have a bit of an opposite experience in terms of changing behavior. First, I'll say that when they made comments about Michelle Obama's clothes, I did go out and buy the Obama family of paper dolls. And we had just as many clothes for President Obama as we did for Mrs. Obama in our collection of paper dolls. The other thing I would say from a changing behavior perspective, this was one of my early experiences on a relatively large construction site. And I was there on my own, and I was there actually acting as an engineer. And there were some things that were being constructed that I disagreed with and I didn't think were in compliance with what needed to happen for this particular building. And I was very young at the time, but had to take this up with the site supervisor. And when I first started talking to him about what was being constructed the wrong way and the reason technically why it wasn't being constructed, and remember, I'm in my young 20s on a job site with dozens of construction workers. But through the course of the conversation, it took a minute or two for him to realize that I actually did know what I was talking about. And there was a turning point, and I could see it in his eyes, where he stopped kind of thinking I was telling him a joke to, oh my God, she knows what she's talking about. But I realized at that point that it was appropriate, good, professional to understand your field well and to present yourself professionally and to be able to have those conversations with the people around you. And from then, that turning point actually changed my behavior so that I would never hesitate to go up and have a conversation with someone on a construction site, whether they were just one of the team members or the job supervisor. So that was a positive experience from a behavior perspective.
Don't apologize. David, is it a quick question or a long question? Quick question. Well, just Sharon or the whole panel?
Well, you can all address it, but Margaret Thatcher said, when you want something said, ask a man. If you want something done, ask a woman. What can women do in America that they can't do in Britain, or that you perceive is more difficult?
So, for example, at my Rotary Club, I went to visit my one in my hometown in the UK. Didn't realize it was men only, they might not let women in for another 100 years after my visit. In America, it's true. In America, it's very different. Is that it truly is the land of opportunity. You work hard, and you get where you are by working hard. It's much more of a class where you went to school, who your friends are, and unfortunately, most of those traditionally used to be male boarding schools. I went to a male boarding school. There were only 16 girls allowed in, which again, I think that's where I get my spirit from, because I thought, wow, this is fantastic. But it's just a different environment. Yeah, and I think that American males are much more progressive in all areas of their life. So I think it's brilliant.
Anybody want to chime in on Europe?
Yeah, I can definitely say that having grown up in America, free to be you and me, and then going over to Europe and sitting in boardrooms in Europe, I was probably in my, 5th meeting when my male boss came to me and said that his male boss had requested that I not talk.
Has that happened often here in the States?
Never.
Okay. All right. So I got a lot of other questions here. I know there's more here. We'll probably in the future do something else with our panelists and bring them back. But to be fair to everybody in the 1 o'clock, I'm going to give them all, say, 30 seconds each to kind of try to wrap something up in a nice little bow. And then we'll figure out what we'll do in the future, because this obviously is a interesting topic, and a lot of, I can see folks out there who have other questions, and we'll try to figure out some way to get to those in the future. However, before we get there, 30 seconds to tie things up. Sharon.
So I would say for all the men in the room, thank you very much for being here. That's amazing that you're here. And for all the ladies in the room, we really have every single advantage in the world. In the US, there are the government and some states that would specifically want to work with minorities and women. So you can work in the whole sandbox, and you have a natural advantage in another sandbox as well. So we're really, really very lucky, and it's up to us to make that opportunity. And I can tell you that if you grab it, it's there.
Well, I can say that I learned more from my co-panelists today than I knew was out there in terms of women in entrepreneurship, and I hope that you have as well. I thought it was a terrific panel, Rick, and I appreciate you putting it together.
Yeah, thank you very much. Business ownership is the best and hardest thing I've ever done outside of being married and raising a family. And when you look at it, it's exactly like being married and raising a family. So I think if everyone starts to approach it a lot more like that, I think things will be easier. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can echo that. Thank you for having us, Rick. And just even the process of going through and preparing thoughts for today has been a good exercise to go through. I'd encourage anybody to, male and female, to go down the entrepreneurial path and start something, grow something, do something on your own. It's a great way to go.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And then remember, business of the month, if you want to put your card in there for that, and then go Vikings.